I'm full of happy bubbles because I am so excited today to be not just launching Exploring with Candace, but launching it honestly with one of my favorite people in the world, especially in my working space. She is wise and well-studied. And as I just said to her, very, I wouldn't call it methodical because that sounds boring, but she's structured and she walks her talk and does the required work. And she's always been, as far as I'm aware, she's Enneagram 5. So she's a deep diver, gather information, research. And today I am exploring the season of menopause and perimenopause. And I saw her as a guest speaker somewhere. And I was like, I know she wouldn't speak unless she knew her stuff. This is Colleen Wilson. We worked together for a number of years. She's very well educated in the business space, but we worked around relationships, self-awareness, parenting, educating. Cole, do you want to just say hi and give people some of the official blurb in the background of what you have behind your name?
Sure, Cans. Thank you. Hi. That was a beautiful intro. And yeah, I remember our working time together fondly and miss it. But yeah, where I am now is just a culmination of that period that we had together and everything else. And I think if I can jump right in and say, one of the things that I'm so enjoying about being in my 49th year and being a perimenopausal woman is this culmination of wisdom and experience. And while there's so much that's quite tough in this period and certainly volatile, fluctuating, I just rest deeply into that. So I'm not going to bore you with my CV because there's quite a lot there. But where I've come to is this place where I've actually recently coined the phrase human navigator. And the idea is, I know, isn't it beautiful? It's
so beautiful.
I love playing with words and making up words, but it's really about helping people better. That's my sweet spot. And it's got like multifaceted approaches from coaching and mentoring, facilitation. I journey with people. I am an absolute deep lover, long-time lover of the Enneagram, which I've brought more and more into my work in the last few years. And yeah, so there's and then lots of sort of products that I work with and tools like your emotion cards, Candy, and lots of other tangible goodies that help to navigate these terrains. And I find myself more and more in the space of transition. And so be that through retrenchment, retirement, empty nesting, menopausing, just change is constant. And so how do we navigate that well? So that's a big part of my work. And another big part of my work is in the space of helping people create environments that are conducive for people that are struggling with their mental health or the complexities of neurodivergence. So how do we allow everybody to be the best version of themselves? So I hope that kind of gives you a concise insight.
I'm going to sum it up. She's incredible with how you navigate change, how you navigate relationships. And if I were to sum it up in one thing is, how do you show up as your best self when things are unstable and tricky, and when you've got to deal with someone else who also has their own stuff going on. At the moment, we used a tool, My World, Your World, Our World, which probably is a beautiful summary of what we're talking about. And I was thinking, oh, I'm still so bad at recognizing someone else's world, what's going on for them, where they're at. And so really what I'm hoping to dive into with you today, Cole, is the knowledge. I've spoken to at least 3 or 4 people in the last 2 weeks who've said to me, I'm kind of like getting hot flashes and I don't really know what to do. How are you coping with it? Or I had someone reach out and say, you said you're a wellness advocate selling essential oils. Like, what do you recommend for menopause or perimenopause? And I realized there's a lot of things out there, but I'm like, I actually don't understand this well. And I've started like dabbling, putting a toe in, but in some way I've been like ignoring the reality. I'm 47 of that change knocking on the door. And so I said, okay, I need to do the research. I'm going to do it in a way that other people can learn too. So this is like the baby steps. So my first question to you, Cole, is what is the reality of this time? Like, as it knocks on our door, is there a purpose to it? And what can we expect potentially? How have you found yourself opening the door to going, okay, this is a change I'm going through?
Okay, beautiful. So just to kind of seat the conversation is to say, I'm not going to get into any of the physiological, hormonal, biological kind of discussions. I think that's better suited in the hands of people that specialize in that space. But rather, what is, how does that present? Whatever that soup and that cocktail of hormones that's shifting and changing inside of us, what does that look like on the outside, and how do we best manage that? And I go straight back into the wisdom of the Enneagram, which talks about the three senses of intelligence: body, mind, and heart, and always add on the spirit to that. So the four elements of us. And really, when we're looking at how it comes into our life and how it presents, it impacts all four of those areas. And I find that when we put like strategies, for want of a better word, in place in each of those four areas, we kind of get this horns of the buffalo approach, where we encapsulate this experience of menopause with lots of products, insights, strategies across our mind, body, heart, and spirit. So that's really been my approach, and maybe we talk into each of those areas. But just to say, this is a time of incredible change, which I know trips up a lot of people. And my experience is based on my personality, which is like, oh, challenge. Okay, cool. Let's see how we can harness this for the best. How do we not be victim to what's happening? Because like when you got pregnant, right? It happens to you. Yes, you had to, go and conceptualize the child. So there was conscious act there, or maybe less conscious. But when we become pregnant, our bodies change of their own accord, right?
Yeah.
And there's the sense of sort of wonder while we're watching this all happen, and bewilderment, and sometimes some other quite complex emotions around it. My pregnancy was unplanned, my first one. So I was also like, I'm not sure that I'm ready for this body change. Menopause is quite like that as well. It's happening to us. We didn't ask for it. We didn't do anything to bring it on. It's like, whew, okay, I'm here. And so a mindset that shifts from being victim to the process to rather taking agency over the process and go, yes, it's happening to me, but I'm not going to let it drive the car. I'm going to hop in the car and drive with it. Yes. So that's been my approach, is just to take a sense of agency and ownership, which is kind of good for your mental health as well, to not feel victim to everything that's fluctuating within us.
Absolutely. And Cole, two things like I take away as you see that. One is, I heard someone say the other day, like, menopause is actually quite a new process physiologically. I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of years, but it's an experience where women move into, hormonally or whatever, that time of seating their wisdom, like the crone, if you like, the wise woman. And physiologically that process happens as well. And I love the point you make that you said at the very start of it, like, I'm getting comfortable in it, like accepting that if we choose to fight it, it's always going to be harder. If we choose to ignore it, it can often even be harder. The energy it takes to go, this isn't happening. But the reality of seeing in it a potential gift, and what is that, and seeking that out. And I think a big thing that can be hard for women is honoring that it's really happening. So also, I don't know where I came across the information, but someone said years ago, this was completely treated as though it was in women's heads. And as though this awful experience James, bye-bye, darling. And sorry, I have a 6-year-old son, and we're doing this on a weekend, and he's just sticking his nose in, even though he knows mom's working, trying to get my attention, which he's not going to. But please forgive us for background, because we're doing live here at the same time. So, so the point was that actually people said it was in their heads, and the truth is that we now know it's very physiological. We know there's a lot actually going on in the body, and so I find women aren't always honored. Oh, you're so like emotional, or oh, there's only starting to emerge into the mainstream the idea that a 28-day cycle, as opposed to you meant to show up every day the same and your hormones are different. And so to really, whatever it is, and as we dive into it, to honor it, to go, actually, today I do have no energy. To actually begin, as the conversations are becoming more prevalent, to really go, this is actually happening to me, and I'm allowed to be exhausted today, or whatever it is. So that point you make of sitting into it, and I would love to dive in the 4 areas you spoke about. So what would you like to start with?
So I also just want to say, in terms of that pathway of that getting to that point where we honor the process and we honor ourselves in the process, I found a sequence of kind of awareness, because amazingly enough, you know, we can be quite far into perimenopause, years even before we clock it. And so it's the awareness, followed by, closely followed by educating ourselves. So really, knowledge is power, and knowledge about ourself is self-empowering. So awareness, education, then with education and awareness can sometimes be a next phase, not for everybody, but it can be a grief phase, because we start to acknowledge the loss of what is, what was. And that's important. That's an important step in the process. If there is just that sense of, you know, loss of energy, loss of libido, loss of perky boobs, loss of emotional stability, loss of feeling, you know, comfortable in the world, or whatever it is, shows up differently for different people, but there is loss. It can be loss. Let me not speak into everybody. There can be loss. So awareness, education, grief, moving into surrender, which is not giving up. It's rather allowing ourselves to rest into, not to fight against, not to resist what is. Don't argue with reality. Okay. So surrender, then acceptance. This is not necessarily a linear path. This is a dance, okay? But it's got the
as a new symptoms arrives, we suddenly back to grief or something.
There we 100%. So then there's what did I say? Acceptance, and then ultimately there's embracing. Okay. And now if somebody's sitting there with incredible body pain, hormones that have brought on, you know, previously unknown levels of anxiety, adult acne, hot flushes, disrupted sleep, mood volatility, whatever it is, and they're going, embrace? Really? Like, how? And I get that, okay, because it's like we want to embrace things that are good and that make us feel good, but embracing is part of that journey, and it's so, there's aspects of it to embrace that are so beautiful, which is what you alluded to just now, the wise woman, the crone, knowing ourselves. I would rather be heading to 49 and perimenopausal than 30 with great tits and more energy, you know. So and the reason why is because I have embraced this idea of, I love this term, sage femme, wise woman in French.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, the sage femme, sage as in sage, and femme as in woman. So the wise woman.
Beautiful.
And it's the
French.
term, yeah, it's the term used in French for midwife. But the direct translation is wise woman. And I think that's also what this surrender journey is asking us to step into, is to let go of so much and rather step into what is being cultivated, which is a different structuring in our brain, a reprioritizing, a different level of awareness, different levels of insight, and obviously loads of experience. So yeah, there's the gifting.
Amazing. When I hear you say that, it's also, I've always said aging for me has been something that I have a Pinterest board from when Pinterest was first around with women I'd trip over that I thought, okay, that's how I want to age. It's just been something that I always felt the desire to redefine how you could age. And so that beauty I've always seen as part of aging is if we put down stuff. Otherwise, that rigidity. I mean, I was actually reading up on fibroids. I have fibroids this morning, and how they literally are like calcified. What are they, like plastic? They're like, literally, if you remove them, they're not messy. There isn't like life flowing through them, and they're things that you haven't looked at and haven't integrated. And so the opportunity to go, what is it that I'm courageously, because it's often like we haven't hidden from something because it's easy. We've hidden from something because it requires courage. And what is the courage to help us look at something that we might actually let it go and put it behind us as we continue on into a new era, as your sage femme also, like it's a midwifing of a new stage of our lives.
There we go. Exactly. Yeah, I love that.
So should we start with body, mind, heart?
Yeah, so let's start with the tangible. Let's start with the body. And obviously, there's nothing that we're going to say here that will, what's the word? What's the official blurb?
Constitute medical advice.
There we go. Consult your doctor.
Yes, this is just sharing of some information. No medical people here. Make sure you talk to your doctors. We're sharing from our experience and learning.
Yeah. And having said that, I'm also not going to speak into HRT because I think it is an entire topic on its own, and it's not one that I've fully got my head around. And I think that there's lots to be said about it. When I say not fully got my head around, I'm saying for myself. But I do think that there's some absolute gold in looking at either HRT or bioidentical hormones or some form of hormone balancing. So I'm just going to put it out there we definitely, it's an important thing for people to educate themselves on and to look into. But when I want to talk about body, I want to talk about it in the context of, can we please tune in more? Okay, so symptoms, as we've often spoken about, CANs, are emails from our body saying, hey, like you just said with your example, the fibroids, this needs looking at, or I need more of this or less of that. So tuning in is so important because our bodies are presenting physiologically very differently. And so asking each time a symptom presents, what do you need? So I'll give you an example. Since I've been working on nutrition and supplementation at a specifically menopausal focused level, I've got hot flushes that come regularly, and they're very short and they're quite intense, but I actually don't mind them. And I'm saying that in the middle of a Durban, east coast of South Africa, brutal summer. Okay.
Yes.
Have we ever been this hot? I know you're slightly more inland. I'm on the coast.
We were there yesterday. I was like, we're melting.
So, I mean, these hot flushes come on a 35 degrees Celsius day with 1,000% humidity is what it feels like. And I'm hot flushing. My word, this is wild. But what it does is every time it happens, I use it as an invitation to slow down. And because it's, you're hot. And so carrying on with activity doesn't really work. And wildly, it also doesn't work. So I just use it as a moment to sit down. And I just catch my breath, take a breath, and I presence myself, and I just thank my body for the reminder to slow down. And while liquid is trickling between my breasts, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. And as I say, I'm in a brutal summer, so I have got every reason to not be okay with it. But it's a choice. So it's those kind of things, listening to your body.
And Cole, sorry, when you say it's brief, is that like 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes?
For me, it's about a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. It's about a minute.
Sorry, I know nothing about this being true at all, but all I keep thinking of, like the fire in us is our creativity, it's our passion, it's like all the fieriness, anger. It's like, it's so interesting to me that it's like almost burning off. And anyway.
And I 100%, and I've got to say, and look, I have walked a long journey with my health, so I'm very, very keyed into that and very aware of the privilege of feeling well. And so when I get a hot flash, I also I'm grateful I'm alive. You know, I'm here having a hot flush. I could be having no hot flushes and not be here. So it's just like there's a vitality in it. Like I'm hot and I'm exuding heat and I'm alive. And
Yeah.
so again, it's not a lot of fun. And you know, I've got a presentation in Johannesburg on Tuesday to a corporate, and Joburg currently has like 30 to 35-degree dry heat temperatures as well. And I'm kind of hoping I don't hot flush in the middle of the workshop, but I know I will because it's a 5-hour workshop. And you know, there it goes. What have we got? What are you showing me?
So this is my cooling peppermint spritz. Do you have one?
No, but I've got peppermint.
So
I've
you
got
put your
I've got Mighty Mint. Do you think that'll work?
you can try Mighty Mint. I've done Mighty Mint. Peppermint definitely for me has been more potent because I played. I love Mighty Mint. But 10 drops or 20 drops in water. And literally just for the heat generally, like, and it's peppermint clarity. I love it. So that's just an added, like, especially when you're in a workshop. See if it helps at all. I don't know.
I'm so excited about that. Thank you. I'm going to do that. And I'm also finding talking into menopause authentically is an important thing. So being at a workshop with corporates, a bunch of people who are actually all by and large younger than me. And I will say, I'm just having a hot moment here because normalizing the conversation is part of, I think, our
experience.
Yes, it's part of our responsibility so that we can pave the way for an easier journey for people coming behind us because there's more understanding and accommodation. So back to listening to the body. The other thing that was pivotal to me was stopping drinking alcohol. I know it's a big one for a lot of people. If you don't drink or you don't drink much, you're like, yeah, doesn't matter. But we by and large live in a alcohol drenched social existence, and so it can be a really big thing. And I just want to acknowledge if anybody's listening to them and they're also feeling like that one glass of red wine is talking to them at 3 a.m, and now they're losing their tolerance for alcohol, whatever it is. It's a big journey. It's another grief journey actually, because we associate it with recreation and socialization, etc., etc. And
Takes the edge off a busy week.
Yeah, it's just, it is part of our culture. And so giving it up was hard initially and has been transformational for me. And I wanted to show you this. If you're not listening to it and you're watching, this is Isoa, which is an alcohol-free elixir. It's called a mood enhancer because it's got lion's mane and cordyceps and HTP5 and scaletium and all the mood uppers, natural, all legal.
Yeah.
But it was just finding that alternative and creating beautiful drinks with sparkling water and pomegranates and mint and cucumber or lemon and having a beautiful non-alcoholic cocktail in the evening. And so my body spoke to me for a lot more years. That it took me many years to listen. It didn't want alcohol anymore. And the same thing went with, some different foods and different sugars not different sugars, sugar. So listen to your body is what I'm saying. And people say, oh, but I've never daytime napped and now I'm tired every afternoon. Well, if you can and your work allows it, build in a siesta. The Italians have got it right. Build in a siesta for 20 minutes. Just listen to our bodies.
And also, like at the moment, I know my body's not loving wheat and I am still eating it. And so I am very much, I heard the beautiful expression the other day of you have a desire of who you want to be. And I would like to be a vegetarian. No, I don't want to be a full vegetarian, but eat a large vegan diet, a vegetarian diet with only a little bit of meat or whatever, and not have wheat. And I'm not there yet. And so at the moment, I'm still realistically in awareness how to make that work in my life. Like, how can I begin to make the choices, make sure there's the fresh food around? What does that take? And so to honor that, often we maybe not us because we're side people, but people think, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give that up, or that's my choice. But it's a process more than it's just a one-day thing, if that makes sense. So I just want to say to people, like, to honor that there's a process sometimes of letting go of something.
There absolutely is a process. It's not by any stretch just a walk through the doorway. It's a pathway, it's a journey, and we zigzag on it. But when we get intentional with it and we recognize that we're on that, then yeah, I mean, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to just share something here that I created also, which was grief, loss, and heartache cards. And part of that was for women in transition. It's because we are having to accept and surrender to so much that isn't anymore before we turn around and we're ready to embrace what is. And just things that help us to navigate that path, insights, tools, but also products, I think is very beautiful. I know in terms of products, I lean heavily into doTERRA as well. The adaptive lives in my desk drawer. Yeah, there's a number of other oils that we can talk about, but the message is tune in, pay attention, listen, and then take action accordingly.
And the point you make is huge, Cole. Like I haven't assumed I'm in perimenopause. I haven't assumed but as I'm starting to learn, I'm one of those people where I'm like, well, large growth in fibroids is often an early pre-menopausal experience. I've had a lot of health challenges as well. So I'm like, oh, well, maybe this has been going on top of everything else, very large estrogen oversupply. And so it's beautiful, as you say, to grow that awareness, that education, to tune into your body. And partly I'm here journeying to try and help people be more aware of that. Are there any other symptoms you've personally experienced that you could just share? If people are going, they can be like, you mentioned the needing a nap, that you've yourself or some people you deal with, so people can go, oh, that could be a symptom.
A lot of body pain. So I came back from an overseas trip, having walked extensively as one does overseas, and it was summer in Europe, and I was in flip-flops. Did I not have a lesson in how bad flip-flops are for you? And I've done that. I've had that experience for many years. I've walked extensively in summer in flip-flops and I've been fine. But because of the high levels of inflammation, that plantar fasciitis was a real issue. Tennis elbow in my left elbow. I play paddle with my right arm. Had this tennis, which would see me waking up in the middle of the night, sleeping like this, and then taking ages just to straighten my arm out. Hip pain, so which is very associated with perimenopause. And what's worked for me in that regard is, so one of the things when I was on this trip overseas, and please, this is my personal experience, but I don't eat dairy, but I was in France, so I said, well, bugger it, and so I ate lots of cheese. So that was the one thing that really spiked my inflammation. And then it's just, inflammation is highly associated with perimenopause anyway, dairy aside. And so again, I got clearer about my diet. Also, I know even if I have a little bit of sugar, my joints start talking. But the biggest thing that I found to resolve that is omega. So and I know doTERRA does amazing omegas. I use the Zinzino omega, which is dose dependent on your body weight. And it was 3 weeks on high doses of omegas. And my body pain went from a 9 out of 10 to a 2 out of 10. Amazing. And incredible. Absolutely incredible. Yeah.
Cole, it's so amazing to hear this. Do you find you journal daily? Do you keep a record, or do you just consciously, when you say tune in, not note it in your mind?
So I've never really been great at record keeping. I do think it's a powerful thing to do, but because I live with a very high level of awareness, so I'm just so keyed in that I don't have to really jot it down to remember or to note or to draw in the dots between that cause and that effect. I'm just super keyed in. And I think one of the greatest gifts that I've received from battling with my health for so long is their hyper awareness, but also a high degree of, I call it radical personal responsibility. I take radical responsibility for my health. I don't drink alcohol, eat sugar, and then moan that I'm overweight and I'm tired, and I don't do that. So I'm keyed in, and when I do something like have cheese in France, and then I'm like, oh, okay, so that's cool. Now I know, and that's good. So I mustn't think that I can do that just for 2 weeks and everything's going to be fine. My body's going to talk. But I do think noting and joining those dots is something powerful to do.
Okay, beautiful. And in terms of the heart, is there anything else you'd like to say about the body, like before we step into
yes,
like the heart?
I just want to say that movement is absolutely, absolutely, absolutely key. Our bodies need to remember. They need to move to remember what they can do, that they can touch toes, that you can sit cross-legged for a long time, that you can go for a walk. So just to keep moving. And I love the fluid movement, like just dance, where you're actually getting every part of your body moving, because it's less forgiving now. You know, if you're younger and you're a runner and you never work on your biceps, well, your body's okay about that. But as you get older, if you don't work on your bicep and you just carry on doing the things that you're doing, there's going to be atrophy and stiffness and that. So whole body movement, swimming or dancing, and we don't need to do 3 kilometers or an hour-long dance session. 5 minutes there, 10 minutes there, it's cool, but keep moving. So that's the body. Okay.
Beautiful. And can I just add, because Nia, I don't know if people are listening, I know Nia class is an amazing way to dance. You're welcome. I know Liz does online, so I join those once a week. There's obviously the Zumbas. You mentioned swimming. Obviously, yoga offers an option of movement, but it's I know even walking is a fantastic. I've heard perimenopause, like a good half hour. What do they call it? Level 2 movement, where you don't have to be extremely like pushed, but you have to be burning up the stress in that. Okay, moving on.
So into the heart space, Candy, I use your emotions cards all the time. I think if anyone's listening and they don't have them, you need to message Candy and get some. They are powerful.
Yeah, we use them too.
Yeah, they're literally the best EQ tool I've ever seen or I've ever used. I love that. There's also some oils in terms of heart opening that I love to use. Actually, Melissa is one of them. Frankincense is one. I'm sure you'll be better versed to say.
Breathe, the big heart opening one, and very relevant for grief. They're letting go of things.
True.
So yeah.
So just keying into the heart space is key, and then linked to heart is connection. And our female relationships become ever more important at this time. There's definitely a chemical, I don't know, oxytocin-based, spiritual, heart-centered driving force for women to connect with other women, connect around these issues, connect around the stage of life that we're in. But I would say to lean in, to make sure that you have a sisterhood to lean into is ideal at this stage. Connection, as you and I both know, is so key to our well-being.
I actually heard someone speak, sorry, I interrupted you there, Cole, which I'd never heard it put so clearly. They literally said diet and exercise for longevity is not as valuable as strong, healthy connections. Like, I mean, that is huge.
Yeah. No, and if you look at all the blue zones, that's what they say. You know, it's about communion and connection. I think just that connection, sisterhood connection, is very, very important at this stage. And having said that, I also think, while this definitely is a time of fluctuation and change in our significant relationships, it's a beautiful thing to be able to walk this road with open dialogue with the people around us who love us and with our significant others, and just to be intentional and to understand that we are changing. We are changing now, and to allow that change to be done with conscious awareness rather than like railroading us, slapping us from behind, knocking us down, and we get up and we're like, well, what is going on? And I don't know this person, I don't know myself, I don't want to be here. You know, it's just to rather, you know, to walk that with awareness and to lean into therapies and coaching and support, and just to be able to talk it through and to really open the heart space. Again, take that agency to connect with the heart space and to navigate it with awareness.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful, Cole. I think it's so real and true. And change, like I keep thinking, we have so much when we understand what's going on in a teenager's brain and what they're going through and why they need more sleep. And like, there's such a difference if you're honoring like the teenage years with a recognition that there is like a reshaping of the brain and physiologically. And I'm thinking like to recognize that for women at our kind of age, that is also happening, and really honoring that. It's so huge. Okay, so we've done body. Is there anything else you want to add on the emotion front?
No,
But I mean, that up and down, partly with hormones. I remember a friend being married who's quite a stable, pregnant, and saying, if men understood what it's like having your hormone shift like this, they would use it as a form of torture. And so just that recognition that even that is changing how you feel, how you respond, where you used to have patience suddenly seems to evaporate. Like the level of change that you're driving a different car that's throwing different things as you turn a corner or whatever it is.
100%. I love that. Men would use it as torture. Yeah, it is hard. And so the mind as the next domain is inextricably linked with the heart, as is everything inextricably linked with the body. We know this. But so one of my signs within perimenopause was that my menstrual cycle, which became further and further apart and shorter and more inconsistent, but every 4 months or so, 3, 4, 5 months or so, I would have a cycle that would literally like put me into the depths of despair. I would call it my black cloud cycle. And I didn't have this as my teens, 20s, 30s, early 40s. And so it was quite interesting because my mind would go to quite dark places, which was not usual for me. It wasn't a place that I knew. And so this is when I'm saying the heart is also linked. There's like despairing, low, like everything's bad. It's just there's nothing works well, just so heavy and like mentally negative and cynical, could not see the wood for the trees. And so I came to accept that for what it was. And no, don't believe everything you think. Do not take your thoughts so seriously. I would see myself in a black cloud and be like, okay, I'm just in that. Clouds by character move. So the cloud is here, it's moved over my head, so it's going to move. In a day or two, I will have a completely different outlook. So I just became very aware of those for what they were. And the same thing with anxiety, which wasn't something that I had experienced before, but in the last few years, it's become part of my lived experience. And so it was also that relationship and just going, this is what it is. And my thinking is as a result of this. So I'm saying the body is inextricably linked because anxiety is in the body. Okay. But it catalyzes a whole lot of thinking that then sends more messages, and it becomes a cycle of thinking, feeling, and sensation in the body, and it all feeds itself. And so I would drive a wedge through one of those cycles and go and, for example, engage some awe in an anxious cycle, and so open my heart, engage gratitude or connection, or go and do something beautiful with my body, go for a massage, go for a swim, and remind my body how it feels to feel good, not just to feel this rising anxiety, and then interrupt my mind with other mechanisms, call on a life coach or a therapy or journal, or read beautiful poetry. So interrupting the cycle of anxiety. So I know we're talking about the mind here, but I can't talk about the mind without talking about the heart and the body.
And Cole, what comes to me, as you said, is how unique each of our experiences are. Because like you say, I'd never really experienced anxiety. Like as somebody who has been anxious from, like, I'm going to say birth, actually probably in utero. And my psychologist has argued, well, not argued, but really tried to put it across to me that I'm an anxious person. But my anxiety is so low compared to where it was for so much of my life that I recognize I'm anxious, but it's just so manageable for me. Like I feel like I lived with it at like 500%, and now it's at like 80%. And other people, that's high because theirs is at 10%, but I'm like, it's nothing. And so whether it's the grief or the darkness or whatever like coming up, and as you say, recognizing the thoughts that are either driven or driving it, as you say, all connected, to recognize everyone's experiences are so unique based on their own past, what they've been through. Like how they carry their stuff in life. And so to just really, I guess, keep coming back to people really asking for help, recognizing where they're at, and that there is no wrong and right place, really. It's uniquely tailored, their version of what's going on for them.
Absolutely. So unique. Yeah.
Great, Cole. And you mentioned spirit. How's the spirit coping with all this?
So, without getting into any direct spiritual practices, I think anything that elevates our consciousness, that expands us, that makes us feel connected to something greater than us, is such beautiful, whatever those practices, rituals, tools are, is to step into them more consciously, because that is a huge sense of freedom and elevating ourselves out of what is actually quite a physiological process, menopause and perimenopause, because the symptoms can be very loud. Obviously, it's an emotional process. Obviously, there's a whole mental restructuring and experience there. But the physical part of the change seems to scream the loudest. And when we engage in some kind of spiritual practice, we just elevate outside of that sort of physical domain where we can get quite stuck. And so those practices are just really important, and awe and gratitude and contemplation and prayer and meditation and beautiful spiritual music are shown scientifically to regulate the nervous system. And so the nervous system can be highly dysregulated in menopause because there's just so much going on in our bodies, and there's so much disruption and dysregulation in multiple systems. So nervous system dysregulation is part and parcel of perimenopause and menopause. And those spiritual practices that I've just mentioned are scientifically proven to regulate the nervous system, which then has a knock-on positive effect on our immune system, our endocrine system, our musculoskeletal system, etc., etc. So it really does have a direct bearing on our physiology, on our heart space, and on our mental space. So I just can't encourage doing things that have a high vibration, a high frequency enough.
Yeah. Cole, is part of what's going on in us, like women so often can be prioritizing everyone else's needs, raising children. I'm laughing because my son's 6 and I'm 47. So for most people, like you say, it's teen, adult, but at this age. But the reality is you've given for so much, you've like taken care of others, and often it's empty nesting or heading that direction more at this age would be perhaps more of the norm. And there's also a calling for the need to prioritize your own self and your own being. Is that something that is potentially, I mean, have you seen people write up about that?
100%, absolutely. And it can be very challenging because we in what's called, so typically perimenopausal and menopausal women are in what's called the sandwich era, where we're still raising kids and having aging parents. And so we're parenting up and down, we're responsible up and down. And so there's a lot of demand on us at this time. So prioritizing ourselves, I don't think has ever been more important for women, and taking that radical responsibility. So looking at those 4 areas, those 4 domains of us, and saying, how can I be more loving to me? I think is a key question. Or is this loving to me? Is this loving to me to say yes to this new project? Is this loving to me to actually, run 10Ks fast as opposed to 5Ks slowly? Is it loving to me to have that glass of wine? Is it loving to me to, I don't know what the other examples are, binge watch a series? And the answer might be yes. It's completely loving to you. Sit for 6 hours on the couch and binge watch because that's what you've keyed in you need. Or am I binge watching for 6 hours on the couch because I'm numbing, because I'm refusing to face something that could actually serve me, but it feels hard? So we ask that, is this loving to me? And we get an authentic answer. Then that's how we can deeply, truly prioritize ourselves. And it's never perfect because there's is, we would love to have less responsibility, all of us. We'd love to have less demand on our time. So it's not always going to be possible to do what's loving to us. But then I say always, well, then how are you doing that thing that's actually hard? What are you bringing to it? Can you bring to it? Can you do that thing that's hard that you don't want to do, but can you do it in a way that's loving to you still? Like listening to beautiful music while you're on your way there, or doing some breath work while you engage with that activity that's actually not so loving to you. Does that make sense?
100%. So in some way, it's the how of what you have to do in that moment. How can you do when you are required to show up in something that isn't your first choice, that isn't the most loving thing to you, but actually your life asks it of you and you need to do it? Like, what can make it packaged in a way that it is more digestible and delicious? How are you going to cook it up? Cole, that's I think a lovely way to draw this to an end. Okay. Cole, as we finish off, a final, because it is always an honor and a privilege to have you in training or in any way work alongside you. I know personally, obviously, I've seen over 700 parents transformed by the work, and educators, and myself personally. How can people follow, connect, contact, stay in touch? Won't you just give your various places?
Yes, of course. I think the best place is just to go to my website. All my contact details are there. My YouTube channel, Spotify links, WhatsApp QR code, email. So it's ColleenWilson.co is the website, not .co.za, not .com, just .co. And my email is Colleen@ColleenWilson.co. So yeah, that's enough.
Beautiful. And that's Colleen, COLLEEN Wilson.
Thank you.